Creatures of the Night. Interlude 2. Rafflesia. Book 1. Acts. Mary Elise Rogers set down her book on botany once her stomach let out a disturbingly loud growl. It was time for dinner. She opened the pantry and was disappointed by her options. She hadn't stocked it much since moving in, so the food was sparse. Neither a bowl of milkless cereal nor a can of soup sounded too appealing, so with disdain, she closed the door. The fridge was next. It opened with the flicker of a faulty bulb. The inside appeared plain without all of the beer bottles that typically clogged every open surface. It was so roomy. 2 shelves of space remained barren, ready to be filled with groceries she was too busy to buy. Mary had just gotten back from a long trip to her sister's house in Thermopolis. It was a weekend getaway that she definitely needed, but with the threat of heavy snow during the work week, she decided it was best to hurry back than risk getting caught in a blizzard and being stuck there for good. She was reminded of this by the cold rush she got when opening the freezer, her third and final chance to discover a meal. Beneath a bag of peas was a frozen TV dinner. The picture on the box wasn't exactly appetizing, but she wasn't in the mood to be picky. Cooking for one was always more appealing to her, since she didn't consider herself an amazing cook. It was always easier to throw together a half-assed meal for herself than to withstand all of the comments and scrutiny that used to accompany preparation for others. She removed the cardboard sleeve and was disgusted by what she saw. Laying still among the mediocre preserved food was a dead fly. Its spindly, hairy legs reached towards the ceiling. It was unpleasant and strange, seeing as how the food was recently purchased. Then, she considered, it probably slipped in back at the manufacturing plant and had been sealed inside the box ever since, entrapped in an edible tomb. What was stranger about it was the position of the fly within the box. It was dead center and facing perfectly straight. It was as if the dead bug had been placed there intentionally. She used her fork to excise the body from her gravy-bathed slab of turkey and tossed it into the kitchen trash can. Had it been her ex-husband's dinner, he would have thrown a fit and demanded a whole new dish. In spite of what she knew he would have wanted, she ate the part that the fly was stuck to first, trying to see if she could taste any of the microscopic hairs or germs that remained left behind after she stuck the tray in the microwave. The dinner, however, didn't have a hint of fly as she ate quickly. It hadn't occurred to her until she began that this was the first thing she had eaten all day. This was a concern she had discussed with her sister and brother-in-law during her stay, and the main thing that made her nervous to be alone. While Rob was a terrible husband in practically every way, He was very regimented, and thus her days were scheduled. They were wed when she was only 19, so the last 7 years of her adult life were spent with a man who always knew what she was going to do tomorrow, whether she wanted to or not. Since their separation, she had struggled to reclaim that spark of identity she had when she was a teen. At this point, all she knew about herself was Mary Elise Walker. Mary Elise Rogers was a stranger. Not that crawling back to Rob Walker was the right move. She was happy to be away from him. The way she saw it in her mind was like this. She was a little fish who was swallowed up by a fat, thoughtless, selfish whale. The whale allowed her to live in his mouth and brush his teeth, and in return, she could feed on whatever little scraps she could find between its giant molars. One day, the fish was sick of the whale's treatment, and him droning on about how his problems were the worst, and he was the most unlucky whale in the whole blue sea. So, that night, while the whale slept, snoring as usual, she swam away through his open mouth. Only, she didn't remember where she was swimming to when the whale picked her up. She had spent so long being carried around the ocean that it all seemed so vast, deep, and empty. It wasn't that she couldn't swim, she just wasn't sure if she was swimming up, down, or backwards. The opportunities and directions were so numerous, it was impossible to tell which way she was supposed to swim. The ocean was at her fingertips, but it was intimidating and lonely. She knew that eventually, if she swam in a straight path, something would appear. What that thing might be, however, scared her. It might be a coral reef, but it could also be an anglerfish. Once the dinner was finished, she stood up and tossed the tray into the garbage. She then brought her fork over to the sink, washed it, and put it away in the drawer. Afterwards, she found herself mindlessly standing around. The court had granted her a fair portion of Rob's money in the divorce, though she was still stressed about finding a job. She had interviews lined up all throughout the week, thinking about which made her bite her fingernails. The job she was most excited about, and therefore most nervous for, was to be an usher at the local movie theater. Rob was a big reader, and didn't see the value in going to movies. She would always ask, and sometimes he would take her, but most of the time he would pass her up to drink beer and play the little putting course in his office. This was partially due to the fact that she loved scary movies, and Rob was too much of a pansy to sit through them without yelping, which bruised his ego. When they would walk by the theater on the street, she loved to look at the posters, imagining the contents of each film she saw. If this job pulled through, she would never miss a movie again. Before she was too engrossed in the fantasy, she stopped. No. If I get too invested now, it'll just hurt more if I don't get the job, she thought to herself. She needed something to occupy her mind, and with no TV, she decided to go check her mail. The mailboxes were located in the dingy lobby of the apartment building. It was a rather small building, with 4 one-bedrooms and 6 two-bedroom apartments. Mary, of course, had just moved into one of the singles, which meant her mail slot was one of the small square doors on the left half of the wall. There was a tall man standing in the corner. She recognized him instantly as the guy who lives across from her, in room 304. She hoped he didn't mind her as she approached her own mailbox that happened to be right next to his. He didn't seem to notice, as he was holding a letter nearly an inch from his face. Mary produced a small, round key from her pocket and stuck it into the keyhole. Before she even unlocked it, she noticed the corner of a black envelope that poked out from the top of the door. She opened it, and the letter flopped down onto the rest of her white, normal envelopes. Growing curious, she pulled it out and tore it open. Immediately, she noted how high quality it was. The envelope itself was patterned in a way that looked like vines, growing, swirling, and spreading from the center outwards with a shiny polish that contrasted the matte paper. The inside was a dark red like velvet. The letter was just as fancy as she freed it from the sleeve. Gothic letters headlined the crisp paper. It read, "Pathways Church, a home for those who are lost." She unfurled it to read the enclosed message. "Dear Mary Elise Rogers," it read, "we at Pathways Church care a lot about community, and we would like to extend a hand to you as a new resident of our small town. Now, you may be thinking, but I'm not religious. That's okay. At Pathways, our goal is not to isolate people who feel outcast, but to bring them together and find common ground. We want to allow our congregants to challenge their beliefs and grow, to find a purpose in this chaotic world. We guarantee that with 1 week of attending service, you will have a good idea of where your life is going next. Join us for midnight mass at 14 Willow Drive. That's just off Jameson beyond the edge of town. We all hope to see you there. Sincerely, Pastor Marshall." It was a touching but off-putting letter. She couldn't tell what exactly it was that creeped her out about it. Maybe it was that she was paranoid. That, or she was scared of meeting new people and actually opening up to them. She folded the letter to insert it back into the envelope when she noticed the man next to her was no longer reading his mail. His eyes were watching her. Not wanting to confront anyone, she simply lowered her head, grabbed the rest of her mail, and turned towards the lobby elevator. Before she could take a step, however, the man spoke. His voice was soft, a hint of nervousness behind his breath.
"Wait, ma'am," he said. You just moved into room 302, right? I'm Dane, your neighbor across the hall. I just thought I would introduce myself if you have a minute. See how you're liking the place."
He was a rather handsome young man, with blonde hair parted down the middle, and spectacles that sat low on his nose. It was at that moment that she remembered not every interaction had to be transactional, performative, or confrontational at all. Some strangers just wanted to connect with her. "Mary," she said, turning back around to face him. "I like it. I mean, living on my own, that is. The apartment's still a mess from moving, you know. Lots of boxes, but ever since I've been here, I've slept like a baby." The words kept spilling out of her mouth when she had only expected to say one or two. The man, however, seemed unbothered, if not amused.
I wish I could say the same,
He said.
I've been having a wicked spout of nightmares lately. Starting to think there could be a gas leak in my apartment. Maybe even the whole building. Turner says he'll take a look next Wednesday. Cheap bastard. I just saw him in his office 5 minutes ago. He's such a jerk.
"Really? He seemed pretty nice when I talked to him," Mary said.
See, that's how he gets you. He's all nice and chatty, but once something needs to get done, he's suddenly a professional asshole. You know, I went without a shower for a week because he couldn't pick up the phone and make one simple call. Sorry, I forgot you just moved here. I don't want to make you feel like you chose a bad place to live or anything. I'm just wound up about it. Everyone who lives here is pretty nice, though. You'll like it. Aside from me, obviously.
He said, and smiled. She smiled too, even laughed a little. It was then that she noticed the deep bags under Dane's eyes, mostly hidden by his reflective lenses. "Well, it was nice meeting you, neighbor. I'll see you on the floor," she said, and turned again.
Wait, sorry. One more thing.
He said. Mary spun back around.
I couldn't help but notice you were reading that letter in the black envelope. The one from Pathways Church. Listen, I know it seems kind of odd, but I have been going for the last week, and it's really made me feel like I can turn my life around. They've helped me with everything but these nightmares. A lot of people from the apartments go. It's a pretty great community. No pressure, obviously, but if you want to go, I'll be there tonight. I can introduce you to the regulars and everything.
Originally, she had been planning to throw the invitation in the trash and rot away in her apartment for the night. With his face smiling down at her, however, she couldn't find it within herself to say no. "Sure. Why not?" she said, and he silently celebrated. "What time should I be there?"
I'm going a little early to meet up with the pastor, but you can come at around 11:45. Get introduced to people.
"Works for me," she said. I wasn't planning to go anywhere, especially not with the snow.
Snow?
He asked, with a look of confusion. "Yeah, there was supposed to be a blizzard tonight, I think. Or maybe I heard wrong." She looked outside to see the dark parking lot, illuminated by yellow overhead lights. Not a single snowflake fell from the sky.
I thought it was supposed to be a nice weekend.
Dane said.
Anyways, I'll see you at the church, yeah?
He began moving towards the elevator. "Yeah, 11:45, she said, and he left. Once he did, she finally noticed the long present flutter in her chest and the sting of hot blush on her face. Book 2. Apostle. There still wasn't a snowflake in the sky when Mary's headlights illuminated the Willow Drive street sign. It seemed Dane was right. The sky was clear as could be, the stars and crescent moon shining brightly. She took a left on the road and was greeted with a steep incline that forced her to lean back against her seat. The bouncing headlights revealed a large metal cross at the top of the hill. It was slightly crooked to the left. As the car climbed, the headlights showed the white chapel that it sat upon. The building was dirty, worn to the point where she questioned whether this was actually the place. If it weren't for the half-dozen cars parked in the makeshift parking lot, she would think the building was abandoned. The white paint that covered the outer walls was dirty, chipped away in many places. The roof appeared sunken, rotten, and a pair of windows were boarded up near the entrance. Above the large, old double doors was a title that made her sure she was in the right location. Just like her invitation, it read, Pathways Church, a home for those who are lost. She exited her car and walked up to the nearly dilapidated double doors. The inside of the church looked pitch dark, from what little she could see through the gap in the entrance. She stuck her face close up to the doors and was able to make out the dim contents of a sullen room. There were shapes inside. People. They were moving, but not a sound escaped through the gap. Everything was silent. The people were all doing the same motion in the direction of the altar. It looked like they were bowing. All of a sudden, the door was pulled open, and light spilled out through the entryway. It was jarring how different the room appeared through the tiny crack as opposed to a full view through the door. Not only were the lights on, but there was music playing, people talking, and a familiar, charming face that made her worries disappear.
Mary, glad you came. I wasn't sure if you would show or not,
Dane said. His expression was jubilant, and there was an energy behind his eyes that was absent when they talked earlier. Hi, Dane, Mary said, quietly. Can I come in?
Of course. What kind of question is that? Come meet everyone. I'll introduce you.
He led her inside and closed the gaping entrance. The nave looked typical for a small chapel. The roof met high in a point, and from it hung a chandelier of candles. The light it produced was a soft orange, but lit the room well. The fire also seemed to produce a sort of incense smell that overtook her nostrils. There was an old, towering organ against the back wall, its silver pipes speckled with spots of rust. Next to it was a statue of what looked to be the Mother Mary, holding a presumed baby Jesus, all wrapped in a bundle of cloth. In front of that was a small stage, including the preacher's podium, where he stood, clad in white. The pews were occupied with about a dozen people. most of which were deep in conversation, though some watched her enter with curious eyes. Beneath their feet stretched a long, red carpet that reached all the way to the stage. She followed Dane to the first 2 rows of pews where most of the people sat.
Hey everyone,
He announced.
this is Mary. It's her first time joining us for Mass.
This resulted in a cacophony of polite welcomes and pleasant exclamations.
This is John and Kelly. They're one of the couples that live on our floor.
Dane said, gesturing to an older couple that was sitting closest to them. "Oh dear," Kelly said to her husband. "Isn't she gorgeous?" John didn't respond, but Mary blushed nonetheless, sweeping a loose strand of dark hair from her forehead and tucking it behind her ear.
That's Gretchen. She's in room 301.
Dane gestured towards an older woman with thick framed glasses and a bob haircut. Mary recognized her from passing, but hadn't properly introduced herself. The lady had a cat, she knew, as there would sometimes be a feline paw swiping from under the door at a lost toy. "Oh, hello," she said. "Nice to make your acquaintance, finally. You're quiet in there, aren't you?" "I suppose a little," Mary said. "I'm just pulling your leg, dear," Gretchen laughed. "It's a good thing, anyway. I prefer that to a neighbor that's too loud." She stared at Dane.
What? I'm sorry. I said I'd try and quiet down,
he said, and Gretchen laughed again. "I'm only teasing you too, dear. I know we've all had sleep issues lately."
Yeah, thanks to that crook, Turner, who refuses to fix his gas line,
Dane said. "Oh, leave that nice man alone," Gretchen said. "There isn't a gas leak in the building. The increase in nightmares is due to our proximity to Halloween. The spirits are arriving early, and what better place to stay but the mind of a sleeping dreamer? Don't fear them. Their afterlives are difficult. They simply need an outlet for all that pain." She didn't appear to be joking this time, as she spun around in her pew to work on a craft in her hands that involved sewing patches onto a piece of black clothing.
Don't mind her.
Dane whispered in her ear.
She's an odd lady.
This distinction made Mary glad, hearing that Dane thought Gretchen was odd. That implied he considered her to be normal. She was used to being the one singled out, considered weird, because that's how Rob always made her feel. After a few years into their marriage, he wouldn't pass up the opportunity to question every little thing she did. It made her feel like an alien, and he was the unluckiest man in the world to be tied to her. All this berating made her think he would like to be rid of her when she left, but instead he groveled and begged, even threatened her, saying he would find her wherever she went. When she tried to step out of the door, a chubby, hairy hand grabbed around her ankle. His sobbing, slobbery face gazed up at her from the kitchen floor. If she was so weird, and everything she did was so wrong, then why didn't he want her to go? Maybe, beneath all that anger and disdain in his eyes, he really did love her. Or, more likely she suspected, it it was to keep his twisted schedule from falling apart at the seams in her absence. No matter the reason, she yanked her foot from his pathetic, groveling grasp and slammed the door in his face.
Let me introduce you to the pastor,
Dane said, which pulled her back to the present moment. She followed Dane up the little stairs towards the podium where the old man stood. His hands were skeletal as they turned the pages of the book. He seemed to be preparing his sermon as his mouth chattered to himself. He wore baggy white robes with gold highlights that looked like vines. His eyes were dull, glazed over, but scanned from side to side as he read the words on the page. Those dull eyes rose to meet Mary's as she walked up, and she saw a spark of light within them.
"Ah, Miss Rogers, so glad you've decided to join us. And you've already made a friend, I see. My name is Pastor Marshall, but you may call me Mike. We aren't much obsessed with formalities here. Please, make yourself at home and find a seat. The Mass will start momentarily. And Dane," he said, laying a bony hand on Dane's arm, "thank you for helping show Miss Rogers the way here. I owe you." "Mary's fine," she chimed in. "You said yourself, this isn't a place for formality." The pastor smiled. "I like you already," he said to her. "Well, it was nice to meet you face to face, Mary." "Nice to meet you, Mike," she said, and followed Dane to the pews. They sat down next to John and Kelly. The four of them in a row looked like two couples. An idea that, for the first time in ages, made her heart flutter. Going places with Rob was a chore, as she always felt embarrassed and found herself apologizing endlessly for her slug of a husband. Next to Dane, however, she felt confident, excited. She snuck a look at him from the side. He was tall, thin, and angular. His jaw was sharp, and his nose ended in a point. Blonde, mid-parted hair covered most of his face from this angle, but she could make out his eye, which appeared far less tired than earlier in the day. They were trained on something, and when the rusty organ roared to life, she knew what it was. Midnight Mass had started.
"All rise,"
Mike began.
"and thank the Lord for the things we cannot change. Let us thank the Lord for the wings He has granted us to overcome things we can. Let us have abundance and be free of trifle or fear. Let us grow anew, from inside out. Amen."
The crowd repeated.
Amen.
Dane said it. So too did Mary. She'd never really had religion as a part of her life before. Her parents had raised her atheist, and she only first went to church with Rob and his family when they were still dating. At this point, if Rob could even still be considered a Christian, he was a horrible one. Despite his neurotic scheduling, it seemed he failed to set aside any time for God. For this reason, Mary hardly went to church either. Not that she had a problem with skipping. It always felt phony to her. When they went, sometimes on holidays in their nicest clothes, and pretended to be a jolly couple, when their home life couldn't be farther from it. Hearing Pastor Mike on the stage, however, made her feel like Rob had made a mistake by giving up his faith. There were lessons he could have learned and applied to his life. Maybe he would have learned to better himself rather than deflecting all of his issues. In the end, though, she couldn't care less about his faith. She wasn't tied to him anymore. After all, if he gave up on it so quickly, maybe that was an indication that there was more value to it than meets the eye. Standing with these people, her neighbors, her community, it felt good. She felt accepted. A part of something that was tender, vulnerable, and growing. Rob hadn't allowed her to be a part of anything aside from his cold, scrutinizing embrace. This was a comforting change of pace. It was in the middle of the sermon when Pastor Mike was talking about the power held within your own body. He told them all to join hands with their neighbors. Dane put his large hand in hers. He had slender fingers with bony knuckles. She held it. It was warm. The books in the pew rack were not Bibles, but a black covered book with red interior. They reminded her of the envelope she received her invitation in. The words inside seemed to be written by Pastor Mike, judging by how effortlessly he quoted them, and how he seemed to know the purpose of every phrase and sentence. It was, for lack of a better term, a self-improvement guide. Chapters boiled down to trusting in the Lord, notably, never called God, and taking action into your own hands, writing your own story in the way you wanted it. Mary hoped she could. Communion capped off the sermon, as they all funneled to the center of the room in a line down the worn, red carpet. One by one, the congregants consumed their piece of the body and blood, and returned to their seats. Dane stepped up to receive his blessing. Then it was Mary's turn. Mike offered her a toothy grin as she stepped forward. He was positioned in front of the statue, with a gold plate full of crackers. "Body of ours," he said, and handed her a round cracker with something spread over top of it. The substance was black, like tar, and had the consistency of cream cheese. She did a double take at the pastor, whose expression had shifted to one of waiting with expectant eyes like daggers. The man next to Mike, who held a chalice, had the same look. His beady pupils bored into hers. Under the scrutiny, she put the cracker in her mouth and chewed it. The substance on top added little flavor, aside from a natural, herbal taste. Next, she approached the bald man with the cup who was looking at her much more pleasant-like now that she had accepted the offering. He handed her a gold chalice, filled with what appeared to be wine. The cup was extravagant, and on one side, she saw the engraving of a large winged insect, a fly. "Blood of ours," the man said, and tipped the cup up towards her face. Reluctantly, she partook of the liquid, which, after she tasted it, didn't seem to be wine. While it had the thickness and consistency of wine, it didn't have the alcoholic aftertaste. Instead, it was pungent, more ferric, all around unpleasant. A shudder traveled down her spine, and the man looked satisfied again. He motioned with his hand for her to take a seat with the others. She obliged, and John stepped up to drink the blood behind her. During the walk back, her eyes met Dane's, and she felt a little less worried.
Gross, isn't it?
He asked her, as soon as she was close enough to hear him whisper.
Don't worry, you get used to the taste.
What was that stuff in the cup? And on the cracker?
Mary asked.
Mike told me it's a sort of herbal remedy. He used to be an alcoholic, but he turned to herbal drinks as a cure. He says this one is like a soothing agent for your brain. Claims it's the best alternative to wine that there is.
I'd argue with that,
Mary whispered. Dane laughed, which made her blush.
Yeah, it's tough on the aftertaste,
he said.
But like I said, you'll get used to it. Like wine, it's kind of an acquired taste. Speaking of,
he tore his eyes from hers, locking them on the black books in the pew rack before him.
I was wondering, since we're finishing up here for the night, if you wanted to go out with me tomorrow, before Mass? Just to get a couple drinks at Polly's, you know. It's no problem if you're busy.
Yes,
she said, without a moment's pause.
I'm free all day. What time?
Book 3, Psalms. The bar parking lot was surprisingly full for a Thursday night when Mary pulled in. Her small, brown car squeezed in between two large trucks. One was red, the other navy blue. She popped her door carefully so as to not ding the red truck on her exit. The last thing she needed now that she felt her life was starting back on track was the return of conflict and confrontation to the fold. She knew if it had been Rob's car that was dinged, she would never hear the end of it, and about how it was a personal attack against him. She shimmied her body in between the two vehicles and stepped around to the glass door that shone with a neon open sign. Stepping inside caused her nose to be assaulted by the scent of cigarettes, and her glasses temporarily fogged over from the moisture difference. She removed them and began squinting around at tables for Dane. There were loads of people there, including a man who sang on stage with a guitar. Behind her, she accidentally backed into someone. She was about to apologize when a pair of bony hands caught her by the shoulders.
Whoa. Hey,
He said,
are you looking for me? I'm sitting over here. Come on. I'll lead you.
Dane took her sweaty palm in his and led her to the small table by the corner of the room. He appeared extremely handsome when she sat down across from him, but the facade dropped when she stuck her fog-free glasses on. The man before her was disheveled, tired, and sweaty. The bags beneath his eyes had returned in full force, which made it look like he hadn't slept in days. He must have noticed her look of concern, because he instantly straightened up and wiped the beads of sweat that dripped from his forehead.
Sorry,
He said,
I'm feeling a little under the weather today. It's that obvious, huh?
"Yeah," she said, not wanting to lie to him. "Was it another poor night's sleep? Or did you come down with something?"
A little of both, I'm afraid. I can't really sleep anymore. My dreams are too lucid, too real. I know it's dumb. I mean, I'm almost 30 years old. But I've always been afraid of bugs. Lately, I've been having these dreams about bugs underneath my skin. I can feel them crawling around in there, just below the surface. The dreams always end with me just ripping it off, allowing them all to escape, spill out. At that point, though, there's nothing left of me but a husk, a bag of skin. They took everything with them. So I just lay there until I wake up, always feeling shittier than when I laid down. Sorry, I'm a sad sack. I know you didn't show up here just to be my dream therapist.
He said with a smile, and awkwardly took a sip of his light beer. "Actually, I had a nightmare too last night. This might sound weird, but it even had bugs in it." This caused Dane to perk up in his seat. "It's the first one I've had since I moved here. First one for a while, actually. It starts when I'm in my bathtub, and I got a knock on the door. I'm not sure how, but I instantly know it's my ex-husband, Rob. I hid in my bathroom until he broke in through the door. 'You're coming back with me,' he said, and dragged me out to the trunk of his car. Instead of his mouth and eyes were just these swarms of black flies that covered his features. It's just, when I left him, he said that he would come find me, that I couldn't really get away from him." She met the eyes of Dane for a moment before realizing how much she had said. "Oops, looks like you're my dream therapist too," she said, grinning.
Call it even.
Dane said, smiling back.
Do you want anything to drink? On me.
"Yes, please. A Shirley Temple would be great. Thanks." Dane went up to the bar and came back with the sugariest Shirley Temple she had ever tasted. It was good, though.
So,
He said, sitting down again.
What did you think of the sermon last night?
It was kind of weird, she said. It's not like any normal church I've been to before. Also, I couldn't help but notice the lack of God and Jesus talk that's usually everywhere in those things.
Oh, that's because it's a pagan chapel. Mike doesn't subscribe to the teachings of the Bible, Jesus, or any of that. I kind of like it, honestly. It feels like all of that stuff usually gets in the way of the true message and how to better your own life, how to be a better person.
Dane took another sip of his beer.
I mean, they helped me a lot, getting my life back on track. You should talk with Mike one-on-one. He's a super nice guy. If you want to go back, that is.
Yeah, I was planning on going tonight. Even though it's a little out of my comfort zone, I just felt so
energized? Dane interjected.
Yeah, Mary said. Just being around so many people in the community, I guess. Feeling like I could belong somewhere.
I know what you mean,
Dane said.
I was skeptical too, but after going for a couple of days, I was hooked. You just leave feeling better about yourself, like it's okay to just be you.
He took another sip and drained the last of his beer, a slight shake in his hand as he did.
So, what do you like to do aside from attending Mass and having nightmares?
He asked. Not much these days, she said. I recently got divorced. My husband and I separated, and he used to be the breadwinner of the house. Boy, didn't he let me forget it. Now that I'm on my own, I'm looking for something new. I was hoping to get a job at the movie theater. I have an interview on Thursday. Otherwise, I guess my main hobby is botany. Plants are my world. All of the different species, patterns, variety of traits and colors, seen nowhere else in nature. The world would be so dull without them, and one day it will be, and people will wish we had taken better care of them all.
What's your favorite plant?
Dane asked. Ooh, that's a tough question. I really like all the carnivorous ones. Plants that feed on animals, establishing themselves as a larger factor in the food chain than something that just gets eaten and stepped on. My favorite would probably have to be Dionea muscipula, the Venus flytrap. It waits with an open jaw for daring bugs to land on. Once it has one, they're stuck as the jaws slowly clamp shut. Then, they digest the creature for all its nutrients and start the process over again. It's an interesting twist in nature. The prey becoming the predator. It's like if deer started hunting people. Actually, it's more like if you sat on a bench and the bench ate you. That's what it's like, Mary said, and noted that the Shirley Temple had already gotten to her. What about you? What's your favorite plant? She asked Dane.
Let's see.
He paused for a moment.
Well, I grew up in Arizona, and I've always loved those cacti that grow real tall with those flowers on the top.
Oh, Cigarros have the most beautiful colors when they bloom, Mary said, and they smiled at each other. The conversation lasted for another 2 hours, until the couple stepped outside into the cold, starry night. The 2 trucks were gone from either side of Mary's car, so she walked right up to the driver's side door. For a moment, she noticed a glint of light and heard a mechanical whirring sound from beyond the bushes to their right. Dane didn't seem to see it. He spoke, and her attention was pulled away.
Well, I'd better get to the chapel early. Mike and I are having another meeting before Mass. See you there?
Sounds good, she said. I didn't have any other plans at midnight.
Catch you later then,
Dane said, and hopped into his white Ford that looked like it could use a wash even in the dingy bar parking lot. Yeah, see you, she said, and got into her own car. On the drive back to the apartment, Mary Elise Rogers' heart began to flutter. Inside her, the grasp of Mary Elise Walker began to melt away. She liked that feeling. Her plan was to go home, freshen up, drink a glass of water, and then see Dane again. She couldn't wait. She'd accomplished all but the last step when she arrived in the makeshift chapel parking lot that was really just a grass field next to it. Dane's car was there. It fit in well with the dilapidated church. She parked her brown Ford next to it and looked in the church window. The interior appeared dark, same as it did last night, but she recognized it as a trick of the light and went inside. Of course, the interior was lit with bright orange candles that hung from an overhead chandelier. Nearly everyone appeared in the same spot they were last night. Everyone except for Dane. He was absent. She walked up to the front stage, saying hello to her neighbors as she went. Mike was standing behind the podium, eyes glazed over as he read a page from that black-colored book. Mary cleared her throat. "Hey, Mike," she said, his eyes instantly warming as they met hers. "Mary, it's so wonderful you decided to join us again. 2 nights in a row, no less," he said, with that wide, tooth-filled grin of his. "Yes, I'm happy to be back. I was just wondering if you knew where Dane was? He said he was coming to meet you." The man's grin slipped a bit, but he kept it up. Dane and I, yes, we just spoke. He is very intent on being here, but just not feeling himself right now. He told me to relay to you that he's sorry and he'll most likely be feeling better by tomorrow. He'll be back. But why is his car still outside? Mary asked. At this, Mike dropped the smile altogether. "I had an associate drive him home. Like I said, he really wasn't feeling himself. Now please, take your seat, Miss Rogers. The sermon is about to begin." No place for formalities, she thought on her walk back to the pew. Take your seat, Miss Rogers. Something about his reaction rubbed her the wrong way. The Mass began. It was much the same as the previous night, but for some reason she felt even more into it. The words spoke directly to her soul. And they didn't just come from the mouth of Pastor Mike, whom she had grown to dislike. They came from within herself, from the people around her, from the chapel. While she missed Dane's bony hands, her neighbors were soft and gentle like his were. They brought a warmness that channeled through them like an electrical circuit. The hour flew by, and soon enough, the zealots were lined on the worn, red rug down the aisle, waiting for their turn at communion. "Body of ours," Mike said when it was her turn. His smile was wide, toothy as ever. For whatever reason, the cracker and wine tasted better the second day. The general herbiness and iron taste were replaced with a sweetness that smelled like honey. After a few more prayers and a little hymn at the end, the sermon was over, and the people were beginning to leave. Mary stuck around to have a conversation with Gretchen about her cats. She thought the old lady had only a single cat, the one that would swat its toys under the door. But it turned out she had another, more solitary kitten.
Snowball likes it quiet, so she spends most of her time in my bedroom,
Gretchen explained.
Joey is a little too excited for her, so she leaves Joey to run rampant in the living room. He loves to play, that cat.
The lady's attention was drawn away from the conversation as she watched something over Mary's shoulder.
"Will you excuse me for a moment, dear?"
she asked.
"I'd like to have a talk with Mike before he turns in for the night."
"Of course," Mary said, and Gretchen left. She turned around to see Mike opening a door, entering it, and closing it behind him. Gretchen, the old lady that she was, hurried to the door in order to catch him. She met it, closed, and went inside. Mary took the opportunity to break free from their one-sided conversation and left. Her car was still parked across from Dane's dirty Ford that made her feel a deep sadness inside, a longing for him. He'll be back tomorrow, she told herself. But would he? Why did she feel like he wouldn't? Like she would never see him again? Never mind the feeling. She got into her car and drove home to her apartment. 23 hours later, Mary returned. She had just battled her way through a job interview where she had to concede that she had no work experience for almost the last decade. The store was looking for someone with experience that she didn't have. How am I supposed to get experience if I can't get a job anywhere? She thought. It bothered her, the way she felt not in control of her life. But the meetings at Pathways Church were definitely helping her confidence and sociability. Night after night, she sat through sermon after sermon. Each time, she quietly hoped Dane would return. But he didn't. The day after she brought it up to Mike, His car disappeared, though she didn't see it in the apartment parking lot either. She was worried about him. It didn't affect her attendance, however, as the meetings captivated her more and more, each session touching on a different part of her messy life, and unlocking another small piece of Mary Elise Rogers within her. One lecture taught her how to talk about herself, market herself, which helped great for interviews. Another taught her how to assess her thoughts and feelings, how to discern between them and which she should listen to. Dane was right in the way he described it. Like church, but straight to the point. No God this, Josiah that. It was you this, you that. Mary, for the first time in ages, felt seen, heard, confident, strong. While she still didn't like Mike, she liked the words he spoke, the songs they sang together, as one. The only thing that wasn't improved by the masses was the incessant nightmares that she had every night before going to bed. They all involved some combination of Rob, her bathroom, her bedroom, and a concerning amount of insects. She had, finally, gotten in touch with their landlord, Turner, and confirmed that there was no gas leak for Dane's sake. Though her hopes remained high, she never saw Dane, never even heard him shuffling around in his room. She often passed notes between his door, hoping that he would read them in his sick state. Mike had apparently been in contact with him, and told her that he came down with a bad case of pneumonia, leaving him bedridden for a good chunk of time. She wished he could at least find the strength to walk to the door and find the gifts she had left. Thursday morning, the day of her long-awaited movie theater interview, she was passing a note beneath the gap in Dane's door. When she stood up, she jumped as she saw an old, pale face staring through a crack in the neighboring door. It was Gretchen. The old woman held the door so only a sliver of her face was visible. It had been days since she had shown up to service. Since the day after Dane stopped coming. Unlike Dane, she appeared to be up and about. But all too similar were the signs of sickness strewn across her face. When she saw the woman at the church, she appeared plump, rosy, and warm. The lady who poked her head from the door was gaunt, her skin pale, her hair stringy. She wore a dirty nightgown. "He isn't home," she said in a hushed tone. "He's in the chapel. I saw him." "Oh, hello, Gretchen," Mary said, trying to quell her shock. I'm pretty sure Mike said he was recovering at home. I'm sure he's getting better any day now." "No," the woman said. "He's in the chapel. Downstairs. I saw him. Mike has him." Mary wanted to say the lady was insane, but her eyes were so lucid, her words so carefully chosen. "The others," she went on. "The others were there too. All of them were changing. Not like changing clothes,
but their bodies were changing. Dane was there. He was changing most drastically of all. Don't go back there, Mary Elise, she said, slinking back into her dark room. Don't go back, or they'll have you too. With that, she closed the door and locked it. Mary was left standing in the hallway, bewildered. Obviously, she didn't believe the crazy ramblings of that woman. Right? The idea was crazy. Impossible. Dane was being held by Mike captive in the church basement. And he was changing? Whatever that meant. It was all too insane. But why did part of her believe it? Knowing she wouldn't be able to hurdle this thought on her own, she gritted her teeth and knocked on Dane's door. She knew he needed rest and didn't want to be the one to disturb him. But after a moment, there was no answer. She knocked again, this time louder, and the door suddenly popped open just a crack. It revealed the dark interior. It was unlocked. Dane? She called inside. Sorry, it's Mary. I just wanted to see if you were okay or needed anything. No response. He must have been asleep. She was about to close the door so as to not disturb him any further when she thought about his car. Its absence from the parking lot. Where had it gone? Who moved it? And what churchgoer drove an ill Dane back to his place and didn't make sure he locked the door behind him? She needed to see for herself. Rather than letting go of the doorknob like she initially planned, she twisted it again and reopened the door. After a quick glance down the quiet hallway, she crept inside. It was surprising how well kept the place was, especially when she thought about how Rob's place probably looked now that she was gone. Everything was neat, in its place. When she got to the bedroom, however, she found one thing that was not in its place. That being Dane. His bed was not only made to a crisp precision, but covered in a layer of dust that suggested a long period of absence. If he wasn't here, then where was he? Was it true what Gretchen said? Was Dane in the basement of Pathways Church? Mike had certainly lied about him being home in bed, so what other lies had he told? Of course, lying was one thing, but the man didn't have it in him to kidnap people, did he? Hold them captive and do things to them? She pictured Mike in her mind and really focused on his face. The man only had two expressions: a lazy, glazed-over smile and a predatory glare. Could it be true? Could he do this?
She found that to resolve the conflict in her brain, there was only one thing that could be done: to go check the church basement. She swallowed with a lump in her throat. "Don't go back there," she then remembered Gretchen saying at the end. "Don't go back there, or they'll have you too." Book 4. Proverb. When she arrived at the chapel, she saw how dirty and disgusting it truly was in the daylight. Most of the siding had been removed by the elements, which revealed the rotten wood beneath. The roof looked like it was ready to cave in, and the cross on top was crooked. Now that she thought about it, why did they still have a cross up there? If it wasn't a Christian church, shouldn't they want to take it down? The windows were dull, in need of cleaning, or in some cases, full-on replacement. The lamp outside was off, but the Pathways church sign was visible from the morning sun. Mary pushed open the heavy wooden doors that squealed as she did. Inside, she was jarred by how it looked. The place was a dump. There were no pews like she was used to seeing, just spots on the ground where the dusty floor was disturbed. There was no chandelier, no podium, no red rug like she had grown used to. She took a closer look at the marks on the ground, where the dust appeared to be wiped away. Handprints settled in before a pair of knees. Whoever was here had been bowing. On the stage was nothing but the statue, holding the golden cup that they drank Mike's herbal remedy from in communion. On the front of it was still engraved that large fly. The statue, however, did not look how she remembered. The woman, whom she once thought to be a depiction of Madonna, had something on her face. Walking up to take a closer look, they were bugs. Black flies that crawled across her head and covered her features, each of them chiseled with an insane level of detail. It was like the figures in her dreams. One of the statue's arms was posed forward to hold the gold chalice, while the other coddled an infant wrapped in blankets. Once thought to be a baby Christ, swaddled in the arms of the mother, was a giant grub, a maggot, all wrapped up and held with the same affection and care as a firstborn. She was frightened by the information before her. This was not how she remembered any of the chapel looking. It told a story that she didn't want to accept. Had anything she'd seen been real? What had she really been doing when she came here at night? The thought sent a chill up her spine. On the back wall and the left side of the room were doors, one of which presumably led to the basement. The one behind the stage appeared to lead to some kind of priest's quarters, Maybe the bell tower. The door to the left, however, she'd remembered seeing Mike slink down there every now and then, including the night Gretchen followed him inside, uninvited. That could have been when she saw it. With a steady hand, she grabbed the doorknob. At first, it was stuck, but with enough yanking, she broke it free. From inside the door wafted the stench of something dead. Oh no, she thought. A viscous liquid clung to the frame below the door, as well as the stairs, which was likely the cause of the sticking. Gretchen wasn't lying, she thought. She remembered the warning again, that they would have her too. What was there to gain by entering this place, other than the fact that Dane could still be alive down there? That was whatever was left of him. She looked back at the double doors. Rays of sunshine shone through them and the dusty windows. Then, she compared it to the dark passage she was actually considering entering. Though it was tempting to turn tail and run, she was afraid she may lose Mary Elise Rogers if she did. Though she was scared, she descended the sticky stone steps into the basement. The rancid smell got stronger the further she went. Soon, the sound of flies buzzing was audible to her. The stone room at the bottom was dimly lit by an orange glow. The deeper she got, the more she heard what sounded like a heartbeat that pumped throughout the walls. The room at the bottom was chock full of black flies, buzzing in every direction and making it rather hard to see. The orange light was produced by a half ring of candles. At the center of this circle was something that she recognized, but was shocked to see. A Rafflesia, the stinking corpse lily. A gigantic South Asian flower that had no reason or ability to grow in a place like this. Yet there one was. In total, the thing took up a good portion of the room, maybe even exceeding the 40 inches she knew it usually grew to be. The flower had 5 distinct, white speckled petals that appeared swollen, rubbery. At the center was a gaping hole. That was how it ate. Much like the Venus flytrap, Rafflesia fed on living creatures rather than rays of sunshine through photosynthesis. It released a stench akin to a dying corpse, which attracted an array of hungry insects. Inside the hole at the center, where the smell bellowed, however, there was no corpse to be found for hungry flies. Only death. Surrounding the Rafflesia and the circle of candles, there was something else beyond the swarm of insects. She stepped around to the side of the corpse lily, holding her shirt over her nose as she did. There, she was afraid. She found what Gretchen was talking about. Bodies, at least 6 of them, lined the walls of the room. All of them were still, just laying there. It was when she got closer that she couldn't hold back the vomit any longer and threw up on the ground. Each of them had a massive chasm torn out of their chests. It appeared as though something had broken out from the inside. It's funny, she thought, how your mind comes up with random stuff when you're scared, as her mind flashed back to one of the only movies she had snuck out to see in the last few years, that being Ridley Scott's Alien. The thought of a disgusting creature breaking its way from the inside of someone's ribcage could only be compared to a chest burster in her mind. This parallel only cemented when she looked up towards the tops of the walls. Above most of the corpses, there was something black. A figure that looked human, but clung to the wall like a fly. Much like the xenomorph from the movie, they were all black, shiny, and spindly. Whatever they were, they didn't react to her presence, or move beyond a few subtle twitches she could make out beyond the swarm. One of the bodies, however, had something else hanging above it. It was white, bulbous, gelatinous, almost translucent. It looked like an overinflated white water balloon with rubber bands wrapped around it. The thing was moving, crawling, which sent ripples down its fatty body. It was nearly the size of an adult person, and when it turned its head, if you could call it that, to look at Mary, she screamed. On the top of a white protrusion that was at the end of the creature's body was a human face. Not only that, it was a face that she recognized. It was Dane. His eyes were closed, and his toothless mouth opened in a stupid gape that told her his face had transferred, but his brain had definitely not. Below the giant maggot was a body. It wore a denim jacket and khaki pants, along with spectacles and shoulder-length blonde hair. Dane's face was frozen in a disturbing, open-mouthed scream. His features were shriveled, as if he had been dead for months. The chasm from which the massive maggot had torn its way was still covered in a layer of transparent slime that looked like snot. This was it. There was nothing she could do for Dane. She needed to get the hell out of there. When she turned to leave, however, she found Mike standing on the other side of the Rafflesia, still wearing his stark white robes. There was something about his face that was wrong, however. Even through the flies in the room, she could tell his eyes and mouth were covered in large swarms. From behind, she felt a sharp pain the pain of something being stabbed into her neck. Mary fell to the ground and removed the object quickly. It was a syringe. The contents already released into her body. On the floor, she spun around. Standing in the entrance to the stairway was a person, clad in a long green robe. In the dim room, it was impossible to make out their face, but she could see the shiny metal sigil of a fly that was clasped beneath their chin.
Another nosy zealot. You know, Miss Rogers, I had a feeling you would be a hard one to catch, but all it took was a little motivation.
He gestured a hand towards the maggot on the wall.
And I had you eating out of the palm of my hand.
The figure in green laughed, before stepping aside and leaving the exit open.
You can leave. Not that it'll do you any good. The transformation is already set in stone. You've been coming for almost a week, and that little concoction I poked you with just now, well, it sped up the process quite a bit. So go ahead, Mary Elise Rogers. Go enjoy your last day of hell on this earth, because soon you will be born anew, part of our body.
The man laughed again as she bolted up the stone sticky stairs and out of the front door of the dilapidated church. Her hands shook like crazy as she stuck her car key in the ignition and sped away down the winding path. When she arrived back at the apartment building, she had to force herself to walk inside. Her muscles felt as though they were giving out beneath the pressure. Even standing upright in the elevator was hard without bracing herself against the side rail. When she got inside her room, she headed straight for the bathroom mirror. Much like how Dane had, dark bags began to form beneath her eyes, and her face was pale, almost void of blood. She looked sickly, dying, and if she was to believe what the man had told her, that was exactly what was happening. She was changing, becoming one of those things she saw down there. That giant maggot wearing Dane's face. Soon, there would be one wearing hers. Losing vision and strength to keep herself upright, she laid down in the bathtub. After a moment, she felt nothing at all. Book 5, Revelation. A red Outback pulled into the apartment parking lot, and a man got out. He was large, with an extra chin and thick framed glasses. He looked at the address on the document he held, then looked up at the building. They were a match. His eyes then moved to the brown Toyota that was parked in the corner spot. "Gotcha," he said to himself, and smirked. He told her he would find her, wherever she went, and all it took was a PI to make that happen. Once he'd seen pictures of her at a bar with a younger, more handsome man, he had the PI figure out where she lived. That behavior was totally unacceptable. Divorce papers be damned. The man waddled his way up to the front door of the building, just as the sun was beginning to set on the mountainous horizon. He tried the door, but it didn't budge. Next, he found her name on the residence list and buzzed her once, twice, and almost a third time when the door popped open. An old, ill-looking couple opened it and held it for him while on their way out. They had dark bags under their eyes and shriveled skin that looked almost ready to fall off.
Come on, John. We'll be late,
the old woman said to the man, who glanced one last time at the stranger he was letting in. Without another moment, however, the stranger made his way inside. He moved with speed and purpose, so as to seem like he was supposed to be there. This didn't stop a man who was descending the stairs from stopping him.
Hi,
the man said, smiling.
Can I help you with something? You're a visitor, right?
He appeared cheery and willing to help.
Yes,
the stranger said, trying not to lose his temper and tell the man to step aside. I'm Rob Walker. My wife lives here. I'm just going up to visit, he said.
Oh, Rob, I'm Turner, the building landlord. Who's your wife?
Mary Elise Walker, he said. She lives up in room 302.
Oh, Mary, yes. She didn't tell me she was married,
he said. This caused blood to boil in Rob's veins. We're going through a bit of a rough patch, Rob said, and pushed past the man up the stairs. Turner simply watched him go with a confused expression. He hadn't gotten a chance to tell the man that he didn't believe Mary Elise was home. He hadn't seen her in over a week. From the energy he got off the guy, however, this wasn't information Turner felt he would be happy to hear. When Rob reached the third floor, he started by knocking softly. Then, after getting no answer, he knocked louder. The image in his mind of her in bed with another man caused him to impulsively try the doorknob. It worked. Door 302 was unlocked, unlatched, and opened without a hitch. The inside was dark. The shades were drawn, and the setting sun was far too gone to help. He switched on a lamp. The room was empty. It didn't even look unpacked. Everything was still haphazardly placed about in cardboard boxes from when she angrily moved away. He went into the bedroom, preparing himself for what he might see. To his delight, however, there was no mystery man in her bed. But Mary herself was also absent from it. There was a final room at the other side of the bed. This one had a light on, and the door was slightly ajar. It was the bathroom. There was the sound of someone inside. Rob thought for a moment whether he should give her the dignity of waiting until she was done to confront her. No, he thought. She's run away from me for long enough. With that, he swung the door open, but did not find what he expected to. The bathtub was painted red with blood and some other mysterious, viscous liquid. From a body in the tub was a trail that smeared up the wall. At the top, behind the shower curtain, was something that Rob could not even believe. Something beyond his wildest nightmares. A hand moved to his face to make sure his glasses were on right. Stuck to the wall of the bathroom in front of him was what appeared to be a human-sized fly. It had 4 man-like limbs that clung to the wall in a hunched position. From its back were a pair of giant, translucent wings that fluttered and twitched. The skin, more like an exoskeleton, was black, shiny, and covered in needle-like hairs. The head, from what he could tell, was that of a giant fly. It had huge red eyes and antennae that sprouted from the top of its deformed skull. In the process of analyzing the abhorrent sight, Rob felt himself lose balance, and he accidentally knocked a hairdryer off the counter, causing a loud crack as it hit the ground. Slowly, he watched in horror as the creature's head, once facing the wall, did a slow 180 to look at him. It was disgusting. Bulbous, red eyes that looked so big they might pop. A pair of vile, fly mandibles twitched and grasped, and below them, a human jaw, full of sharp teeth, that opened to produce a haunting scream. Rob's legs couldn't move fast enough as he hauled ass across the bedroom. On chitin wings, the insectoid monster was so much faster than him and came down on his back before he was even close to the door. The fly creature used its spindly, sharp-clawed hands to flip its prey over on his back. Rob fought, but there wasn't much fight to give, as the beast used talon-like fingers to tear a gash in his large, pale jugular. He tried to scream, but it only came out like a gurgle as the black fly fed. The meal was long awaited and bountiful, as the monster found a great deal of calories within the man's skin. Once it felt full, recharged, and the corpse was looking like little more than a pile of gore on the bedroom carpet, the thing rose to its 2 feet, its head nearly scraping the 7-foot ceiling. With its appetite satiated, it felt the call to return home. It wouldn't be long now until all of them were together. One body. The body of theirs. With the slash of a disfigured, dangerous claw, the window was shattered. The dark, shiny creature perched on the fire escape, before extending its chitin wings yet again. Under the cover of darkness from the newly set sun, the beast took flight. While most nocturnal insects use the moon as their guide, the creature flew away from the rock. Rather, it was drawn towards a small, dilapidated building on the outskirts of town.